I'm Carole Kushnir. I'm from California, and I'm here representing being identified with the BRCA2 mutation.
And I want to, before we get into the BRCA2 mutation, I want to know a little bit more about you. I mean, you live in California now. Where are you from originally?
Well, I was born in New York, raised in New Jersey, and went to college in New York, and got married out east, and we moved to California in the late 70s.
Okay. Wow. So you've been in California for a while now.
Right.
And what do you do for fun? What do you do in California?
Well, I do Pilates, I bike, I hike, and I'm very interested in genealogy and family history.
And do you know much about your family's background and where your family's from?
Well, I know about up to as far as my grandparents, Eastern Europeans, and I've also worked on my daughter-in-law's family, and they go back to the Mayflower.
Oh, wow. Wow, you were able to trace back that far.
Right.
Wow, that's pretty cool. And have you ever visited, do you feel a special connection with family history? Have you visited Eastern Europe? And is that meaningful to you?
Well, actually, it's on my list of places to go. We've traveled a lot, but we haven't been to Eastern Europe.
I see. Well, let's come back to this BRCA2 mutation. Can you tell us a little bit more? What is the BRCA2 mutation that you have, and what does it mean?
Well, I have the one mutation is that was tested and reported is 6174 del T, and it is a pretty common mutation in Ashkenazi Jewish people. And an uncle of mine also has the same mutation, and my cousin, his daughter.
I see. So this appears to be a familial mutation that seems to be in other family members.
Right. It is a familial mutation, but as I mentioned, it is common in Ashkenazi Jewish background.
And what does having this mutation mean? Well, actually, maybe we should ask this in order. When did you find out you had the mutation?
I found out in early 2010.
Okay.
And it was a surprise. I did the 23andMe genetic testing, and the results came back, and it was surprising.
And what did they tell you it means? Like when you have this mutation, what does it mean? What is for you, for an individual?
Well, the risk of breast cancer is increased compared to the general population, and the risk of ovarian cancer is increased.
And do you know what those increased risks were, what those percentages were?
Well, for the breast cancer risk, it's between 20 and 50% risk. Although I saw a higher number earlier when I looked recently, it seems like the number I saw changed. And for ovarian cancer, the risk is much lower, but the risk is higher than in the general population. You can also calculate the risk based on age. So compared to the general population, the risk for breast cancer at my age of 70 is about 4.5 out of 100 compared to about 2.5 out of 100 for a woman at age 70 who does not have the BRCA mutation.
I see. And what did you think about this whole sort of probability issue, you know, the idea of a percentage? I mean, I think a lot of people think genetics is going to tell them, oh, I am or am not going to have this trait. What was running through your mind?
A lot. I am married to a physicist who understands statistics, and he must have explained this to me half a dozen times. And all I could focus on was the high number. But of course, as you get older, the risk, it changes, it varies. Assuming that there are 100 people, 100 women with the BRCA mutation, and 50 out of 100 have already had breast cancer, then the statistics change. And I can't really explain it, but it is daunting to think that there's, double the risk of someone else my age, even if it is a low number.
Sure. I mean, I can imagine. It sounds like you discovered that, okay, there's a lot of math and there's a lot of research behind those numbers, but the numbers are still the numbers. And I imagine, it has sort of an anxiety effect on an individual. Did you feel anxious or worried? And what did you end up doing? Did it change anything for you? And did you take an action?
Well, I was very anxious, and I called my doctor. He was away. I called another doctor, and he was away. And I called a friend who works at one of the local hospitals, and I said, this is the situation, what do you recommend I do? And she gave me the name of a doctor, and it was confirmed. By the time I had that information, it was confirmed by the doctor who had returned. So I went to see a breast oncologist and at a very large medical center. And at the same time, she scheduled me to see a genetic counselor, which is recommended. When you get this information, it's recommended that you speak to someone and see someone who understands the genetics. So I did see this person, and the physician and the genetic counselor on the same day, and she gave me a very thorough exam and a very thorough explanation. There was no rush, and I was advised to consider strongly having my ovaries removed, and to have twice a year breast exam, and 1 time a year a breast MRI and a breast mammogram. And I've already followed up 2 times. I see her twice a year, and I've had the MRI and breast exam twice.
Wow, you took a lot of action.
I did.
And this was all based on the advice and the medical advice of a genetic counselor and your clinician.
Right. And the genetic counselor took a history of everyone in the family, mothers, fathers, grandfathers, and it was interesting to find out my maternal grandmother died when my mother was 5, so we're talking about the 1920s. Mm-hmm. And I was always told my grandmother died of stomach cancer, and the genetic counselor brought up the possibility that she had had ovarian cancer. Of course, we wouldn't know, and this was the 1920s, and that was what we heard, that she died of stomach cancer, but it could have been ovarian cancer.
Wow. What did this effect have on your anxiety about the information and about your sort of medical future?
Oh, it made me very anxious, but I keep busy. I work, so it's something that's in the back of my mind. It's not invisible, but I took action. I had my ovaries removed, and it was a pretty simple procedure. Everything, they completely analyze all the slides, and everything was clear. So for that I am grateful, and I'm following up on the mammograms and exams.
And so far it's all good news.
So far so good.
I'm glad to hear that. In this process, was it just a personal decision for you, or did you include family members in discussing it and trying to figure out what to do as well?
Well, I'll be married 50 years in
Congratulations.
2014. I'm very close with my husband, and he and I discussed this, and it just seemed like it was the right thing to do. Of course, I read a lot, and I had family members who had breast cancer and ovarian cancer, and none of them were BRCA2, or any BRCA for that matter. So it wasn't as if I knew anybody that had this, was in this situation.
Do you even, can you tell us, it sounds like you did a lot of reading and researching yourself trying to learn about it. Do you know what the Brachy genes do in a cell or in the body?
Well, if you have a BRCA gene, and if you have a normal gene which regulates how the non-cancer cells would be working, then you wouldn't be subject to the risk of breast cancer or ovarian cancer based on just that BRCA gene. However, if you have the mutation, there's, as far as I understand it, there's, in my particular case, I'm missing the T, and the whole gene shifts. The BRCA gene is shifting, and there's a mutation, and so it's not operating correctly. Is my best understanding.
That's a pretty good understanding. However, the mutation and the resulting protein that doesn't work so well, it doesn't seem to lead to completely breast cancer, ovarian cancer in all people who have it, as you mentioned. What are some of the environmental things? Did a clinician or genetic counselor talk to you about the environmental components that may play a part in this?
Well, I was asked how much alcohol I drink, and I said, well, I live in California, you know, I often have a glass of wine with dinner. And so they don't know, it's not for certain, but they're recommending not drinking too much alcohol. And as far as the environment goes, there was really nothing much that they discussed, but we eat healthy, and I moderate my wine drinking.
It sounds like you lead a pretty healthy lifestyle, so that's good. I'm actually curious. I'm curious to know, sort of, there's this sort of personal feeling and an idea of, you know, when you find out. Did anyone in your family have anxiety for you as well, or were other family members concerned, and did they interpret it the same way you did? Did they only listen to you for information? Did they look in other places?
Well, a lot of people in my family took the 23andMe test. Our two sons, my husband, because his mother had breast cancer, he took the test. Our daughter-in-laws took the test. We asked an uncle, my paternal uncle, to take the test, and he was BRCA2, and his daughter took the test, and she's BRCA2. So one of our sons is BRCA2. So my sister took the test, and she was negative. I forgot about my sister. And another cousin on my mother's side took the test, and she was negative also, but she found out she had some hearing loss, a gene that affected hearing, could affect hearing. She isn't affected, but her grandson, she found, because of that, they identified that the grandson who had some hearing issues had the same mutation. So everybody was supportive and understanding, but I'm a pretty open person, so they just took it, and they took my lead.
You mentioned that one of your sons has the BRCA2, but the other son does not?
Right.
It's great that you were able to be sort of an example and a leader for your family and sort of how to tackle information like this. Did anyone else, in general, was everyone else's reaction the same? You mentioned that you have female relatives who may be younger than you who also had the mutation. Did they?
Well, my one cousin is in the process right now
I see.
of scheduling an appointment for surgical removal of her ovaries, oophorectomy.
I see. So it sounds like, there's everyone's sort of going to talk to their doctor and make these decisions about what's the best action to take for themselves.
And she saw a genetic counselor as well.
So I'm also curious to know what else you found out from your genetic report. You said you went to 23andMe, and was the BRCA2 mutation the only surprise you found?
Well, I found out that I had a low risk for Alzheimer's disease, but I'm not so sure that was accurate. I also found out that I have the Tay-Sachs mutation. And Tay-Sachs is another Ashkenazi Jewish genetic mutation. And since I'm not having any children, and my husband wasn't a carrier, then I didn't really worry about it, but I was surprised. If you have a pregnancy and your baby is identified as having Tay-Sachs, the result of a Tay-Sachs baby is they die within a couple of years of birth. And it's a lipid storage disease where the baby is missing an enzyme that metabolizes a lipid, and this lipid is normally metabolized, but when you have the mutation or when you have Tay-Sachs disease, the lipid accumulates in the brain, and the baby dies.
Wow. So although you knew about your ancestry and you knew you were part of this Ashkenazi Jewish population or lineage, and there were maybe certain variants that you may carry, you didn't know which ones, and this was news to you to be a carrier for this.
Right, it was.
And do you know if your sons are also carriers?
I don't remember. It was more the BRCA2. I also have Gaucher's disease, and that's another lipid storage disease in Ashkenazi Jews, but not limited to Ashkenazi Jews.
I see.
And they're both carriers because I have the disease.
You mentioned you're a carrier of Tay-Sachs, and you're not sure if your sons have the mutation as well, and they could be carriers. Would it affect if you hadn't had kids yet and you were planning your life? Is this something that would be important to you in making sure before you had children with a particular mate, making sure that person was not a carrier of Tay-Sachs as well?
Well, with the information we have today, I certainly would inquire and have my husband tested and take action if I would want to make sure that we were tested, and if I were to get pregnant, I'd want to know if the baby I was carrying had Tay-Sachs or not.
You said your sons are carriers, and have your sons have they had any biological children yet?
Yes, they each have 2 sons.
They each have 2 sons?
Right. One son does not have BRCA2 mutation.
Oh, that's right.
One son does, and they both have 2 sons.
I see. So I was just wondering if there's any anxiety. I mean, the fact that you're a carrier and one son is a carrier for the BRCA2 mutation, I guess it manifests more in females than males.
Right, but there is a risk for male breast cancer, and they believe there may be a link to prostate cancer. And the one son just seems to be taking it in stride and not focusing on it right now.
There are a lot of people in the general population some who don't know very much about genetics, and as this information becomes more widespread, they may discover, like you, that they have a BRCA2 or BRCA1 mutation. Females in particular who don't know very much. If you had any advice to tell somebody who just found out they have a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation, is there anything you think it's important for them to know, or any particular advice or message you would give them?
Well, if someone does inquire and finds out, I certainly think they should get genetic counseling and see a physician who is a specialist in breast oncology, who is aware of the latest and greatest research. We're fortunate to live in an area where there are wonderful hospitals and research centers. And so I strongly advise people to take action and do what's best for them. I know age is a factor. If you find out you're in your 20s or 30s and you haven't started a family or had children yet, what's recommended might be entirely different than what was recommended for me.
Great. Carole, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for exploring this topic.